All right, today I'm going to be doing something different. Recently, I received an email from a young gentleman who happens to be on the screen right now, seeking some advice from the male perspective, or I should say from my perspective. And I thought I'd record the conversation and share it with everybody. So, Jay, I want to thank you for being on. Really quickly, do I have your permission to record and share this publicly?
You do, yes.
Okay. So why don't you tell me why you reached out to me?
Uh, well, I reached out to you because I saw one of your videos online about what happens to men who've been out of a relationship for a long period of time,
Okay.
uh, and I found it a little bit discouraging because at 41 years old, I've actually never been in a relationship.
Hmm.
Um, so it was. Uh, So I was kind of looking for some kind of reassurance that there, is still hope for someone like me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So why don't you walk me through kind of your dating experience? Kind of let's start from there. I mean, you're in your 40s, am I correct?
I am. I'm 41. Right.
41. Okay, thanks for sharing that with everybody. And you haven't had a relationship of anything of significance, or you haven't even had a short-lived experience.
Not even a short-lived experience, unfortunately. So,
All right,
um,
let's start with, do you put yourself out there?
I try.
What
It's
does try, what does try mean? Just so, and I'm saying that with
sure.
a little bit of a smile. But what does trying mean?
Um, well, I ask, um, friends to introduce me if they know of anybody who's looking to date. I ask. I'm, you know, fairly outgoing and friendly with strangers, and I have tried online dating a couple of times with mm, pretty abysmal results. So,
All right,
uh,
let's talk about what abysmal results is. So you've tried online, and by the way, let's kind of look at the reality of life. It's not like at 40 years old, you're not walking around an eligible group of single people, usually in your daily life. Am I right?
that's true.
Okay. And do you work from home or do you actually go into an office or a workplace?
I go into an office,
Okay, okay. So you have people within your social circle at work. I mean, I'm assuming at least not from a dating perspective, but you socialize with people.
right?
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So, but the reality is it's kind of difficult it's kind of like probably even a little taboo to date where you work kind of thing. So, do you socialize after work with anybody within your work environment? Do you go to any restaurants or, you know, bars, that sort of thing with coworkers? That's
Not necessarily with coworkers. I've tried to reach out to some coworkers, but mm, basically they've all got things on their own going on.
yeah.
I do have um, a couple of friend groups that I spend time with. Um, I organize and run a board game group on Wednesdays, and so
Okay.
um, we have some fun with that. And you know, it's usually about maybe 60-40 male to female ratio. So,
Okay. So you've got some female friends within the board game group, is that right?
right,
Okay.
that's right.
All right, so let's keep going down the list. So you do occasionally socialize, but I mean, and as we said earlier, it's a little bit difficult to even walk up to a total stranger and say hi. And let's forgetting just the saying hi, but hey, I find you interesting. Would you like to talk? And then taking it to the next level. And in many cases, that can even feel intrusive. So I can understand why you might possibly have a reservation about doing that. Now, you said, Jay, that you did online dating and you said dismal results. I mean, when you say dismal, like no, well, was it dating site or a dating app? Or let me differentiate: dating site or a swipe app?
Um, Multiple different swipe apps, and
Okay.
as far as I can tell, all the sites are swipe apps now. So,
Yeah, I'm only differentiating that if you actually use the functionality of, say, a Match.com, OkCupid, where you'd actually use your laptop versus the mobile device, there is a slight difference when you're
Mhm.
looking at a broader range of information. And one of the challenges men have, and I suspect this is possibly one of the things that I mentioned in one of the videos you watched, is that on average, men swipe on women something like 55 to 60% of the time. And yet women only swipe, and we're talking swiping right, interested, and women only swipe right. I think it's somewhere around 4 to 6% of the time. So I recognize that that could feel a little demoralizing from that vantage point, versus how many times you get swiped. Now, Jay, I want to be really upfront with you. And this is something I've observed. 97% of dating profiles I've looked at, whether they're men and women, are so poorly done. That's one of the reasons why both men and women, experience poor results. So I know we won't have time to look at your dating profile, but I suspect if you actually put together a better profile, which I mean is quality photographs and a well-written essay or bio, if you will, that would actually increase your odds.
Right. Well, I mean, I had a couple of people look over my bio, and I had some professional photographs taken,
Okay,
um,
good.
and it, you know, and I even paid for all of the paid features on all the sites, and it, I was getting like maybe a match every other month. So
So now when you say match, what you're saying is someone that you were interested in, they were interested in you. Is that right?
right.
Okay. Is it possible that some women were interested in you, but you weren't interested in them?
I mean, we'll never know, but
Well, actually, if you paid for the feature, like with a Bumble or a Hinge, you can actually see who liked you without having to like them, as a heads up. But of the one every other month, did you ever connect with any of them? All it takes is one win, by the way.
well, yeah, and I understand that. I mean, um, honestly, my dad was the first and only person my mom, or my mom was the first and only person my dad ever went on a date with, and they were
Yeah.
together for 49 years until he died. So,
Oh,
uh, but um, but yeah, uh, I went on about uh two or three. Well, I went on three dates with people that I met online. Um, and then the last person was someone who was just constantly asking me for money, and really that was about the extent of it for that one. So
well, that's
uh
no good. And
yeah.
sadly, men and women on both sides of the aisle are potential prey for scam artists and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, online dating caters to that a bit, and I would venture even to say 10-15% of people are in that scam mode, but that still leaves 80, 85, 90% of people that are possibly legit. And when I say possibly legit, I mean there are a lot of people that are also emotionally wounded, struggle in relationships, that sort of thing. Let me reframe the word legit, but I'll just say emotionally healthy. So, so Jay, let me ask you. I want you to take a deep breath when at this moment, and just say, why do you think, if you had to look inward, if you had to look inside, why do you think you haven't been successful in generating a relationship?
Well, I want to say that it's just a matter of the timing being off, or that I'm maybe not very compatible with very many people. um and certainly those things are possible. But you know also it's very difficult to not think that there's something wrong with you when you're in my situation.
Yeah.
Um, so, and it's frustrating because it's not like people are just going to tell you what that is. They'll
Yeah.
criticize you for being needy or things like that just for asking the question. Um, but you know, um, I will say that um, there are certain aspects of dating that I'm uncomfortable with. The initial approach, obviously, and uh, physical touch, I'm uncomfortable with. Uh, and I
Let's
think
talk about that. Let's talk about that for a second.
sure.
Well, let's talk about. Well, I want to go back even further than where I was going to go. So, and by the way, I'm talking to an audience at the same time. So let me
Mhm.
just say this: what you shared was very vulnerable. To say it's hard not to think that there's something wrong with me. To think what's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? Why am I not lovable? Why am I not likable? That's a very sincere experience that you shared with us, and you're not alone. I just want you to know that. And believe me, I'm going to raise my hand. I can't tell you how many times I have felt triggered in that same regard. And I would venture to say most people feel that way. And as you may or may not know, I predominantly coach women. And I'll tell you, dating triggers the number one emotional health issue I think we're all faced with is I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, and I'm not likable. So that that I know that doesn't make it feel better that you're in the same boat as everyone else. And yet this is kind of the environment we're in. And one of the hardest things you just said approach, and that's a terminology oftentimes used for male confidence coaches talking about approaching people. That's a terminology that's used, but
Right.
it's a statement of reality is we have to, if we're going to connect with someone, someone has to make the initial approach. It's interesting as the dating site Bumble made it so women actually made the first contact and then the man went from there. But the reality is walking up to a total stranger can be very intimidating. And believe me, and I just want you to know something, Jay. I am like I'm petrified wood when it comes to doing that. I am very fearful of walking up to a total stranger, and I'm what's considered an extrovert. I'm considered somebody that should naturally be able to do that, and I struggle with it mightily, I will say. Um, but you said something that I wanted to address because I wonder if there's something psychological going on regarding you saying physical touch. Is it that you struggle receiving like just a hug, or do you feel fearful of touching someone? I'm curious to know, and if I could be totally off base. So could you elaborate on that?
Well, it's similar um to the difficulty that I have, initiating just, you know, verbal contact with someone is that um if if I were to try to um you know touch a woman in a friendly way, to try to you know, possibly even escalate things sexually, um there's like a block in my head that says that you know that my touch isn't wanted, that um that I'd be
Can I jump in here for a
that it would
second?
be unwelcome. Yeah.
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 So,
Go ahead.
so what's interesting, and certainly I think you're a gentleman that recognizes that if you are going to physically touch someone, that you'd want to have consent and there's mutual agreement going on. But I think, given that you haven't had those opportunities, I suspect to some degree you have this, it's a story in your head that it's unwanted. Um, and by the way, that's again a very fair fear to have that you aren't going to be wanted by someone, that you might, turn someone off, that sort of thing. And this really, if we get really granular, let's just forget the meeting part of the aspect of dating. What I suspect is really going on for you is you probably have a few fears, insecurities, limiting beliefs about yourself when it comes to your worthiness. And you kind of alliterate or, kind of reflected that even a little bit. So the question then is, you've watched some videos, you came across my video. I'm curious to know, are you familiar with the concept? If you watched a few of my videos, I talk about childhood wounds and adult traumas. Have you done
Right.
any work in the area of personal development, self-help, spiritual work, or therapy to maybe work on your fears and insecurities? Have you done any work in that realm?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm working with a therapist that I see every week. Um, I'm close with my church community, and um, in that regard, spiritually, and I consider myself a fairly spiritual person as well.
Okay.
Um,
Now you said you see your therapist once a week. How long? And by the way, again, thank you for sharing that publicly.
mm,
And by the way, I'm a big proponent, that we all could benefit from doing regular work on ourselves. So bravo to you that you're actually seeing someone once a week. A quick question: how long you been seeing the therapist, just for a ballpark perspective?
um, I think this one I've been seeing for about 3 to 4 years.
Okay. Now, does your therapist have any, perspective on where you're at from your romantic standpoint? Have they given you any insight? I'd be curious to hear what your therapist thinks.
Um, Not really, and the this is kind of something that I've noticed with therapists in general. They seem to have a little bit of discomfort when it comes to you know working on something that's not a codified mental illness, right?
Okay.
So um, so while we have worked together um, on sort of addressing the limiting beliefs that are keeping me from talking to people, or that are keeping me from meeting someone I might be compatible with.
Yeah.
Uh, I haven't really gotten necessarily into any kind of root causes of that or childhood trauma, but um, aside from, like, maybe one sort of teasing incident when I was very young at school. So, but
Yeah.
um,
Well, and therapists are bound under certain parameters that makes it difficult on
yeah,
some level versus working with a coach, because I can, a coach like myself or someone else have different parameters in giving perspective and that sort of thing. Um, would you say you have a confidence issue?
I think given my circumstances, it's a little difficult to not have a confidence issue.
Yeah. Um, and by the way, I don't even like framing it that way, so please forgive me, but
Mm,
this is representative of, when you're connecting with someone, is having a little bit of boldness, some braveness, and it's certainly challenging. My sense of you right now, just, and by the way, again, I'm going to put this on my channel, that women watch. I'm going to put it on my men's channel too, this video. um you know, you seem like a nice gentleman. Okay. I mean, you do seem a little quiet or reserved. I know possibly it could be just that you're on camera and that could be a little bit daunting as well. But you seem like a nice gentleman. By the way, for any of the women watching, you know, maybe we should put the two of you together. Do you mind giving us the part of the country you live in?
Um, live in the uh, southeast along the Alabama Gulf Coast. So,
Okay, cool. Oh, you're along the coast. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So if anyone's nearby, maybe you might want to connect with Jay. Um, so what do you think? I'm just curious. We're going to go down a different rabbit hole because you reached out, and I want you to know that you. And by the way, for those watching, I just want you to know he wrote me a very kind message. I just want you to know that I was very moved by what you shared. You know, and that I wanted to reach out because of that. What did you think I would help you with? I'm curious. I mean, did you give that any thought?
I I guess I just wanted to get some kind of reassurance that um, being without a relationship for all this time hasn't essentially, permanently damaged my ability to form relationships in the future. Uh, which is the fear that I have.
Yeah.
But
So, and again, that's a very valid fear. And I want you to think about, I did this in a video the other day, but I want you to think about what wolf you feed. Do you know the story of the wolf you feed narrative? If you feed, you know, one wolf like negativity, it's probably going to turn into an angry negative wolf. But if you feed another wolf positivity, you know, and I'm just giving you the Cliff Note version of this storyline, it's going to have a different effect. So my suspicion is on one hand, you probably could use some help with communication skills, confidence, practice, talking to people. I certainly within your game group, I don't know how friendly you are with the women in the group, but I would invite you to spend a little more time with them just on a social level, maybe even possibly one-on-one, non-romantic level, just to build this bit of, oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
but most of them are married, so it's a little bit of a yeah. Have to be careful what lines to cross. Or
Oh, well,
yeah.
then fair enough. Fair enough.
So,
You got to put some single women in the group, by the way.
yeah.
But fair enough. But you know, certainly, and even in maybe one of your next game nights, you can talk about this. You can even share this video with them, and see just even because you have at least a captive, you know, audience of friends that could maybe give you some insight, preferably coming from love and not from
Mhm.
a judgment. So, so coming back to the wolf we feed, here's the thing. And this is really difficult. You know, if we're kind of reinforcing the tape in our head, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, it's hard for me, then all you're going to see is more of that. And so, and I think partially the reason why you reached out to me is maybe because you're like, okay, look, I think it's time to shift. It's time to make a change in my life. It could simply start by what you consume for information as a starting point. I would also encourage you to talk to your therapist about this in a little bit more detail. Like, you know, again, they're not, you know, yes, they're designed to deal with mental health issues, but this is an emotional health issue, which is
Right.
within their bailiwick. A good therapist can give you some perspective. And ideally, the benefit of working with a therapist is just to practice your communication skills, identifying what you're feeling and being able to articulate to someone that feels safe. I suspect one of the hardest things for you to do is open up. And certainly you're opening up with me, which is really, like I said, bravo to you. But it's hard to open up to people we don't know. And the more we practice this, you know, the more comfortable we are. This isn't like nobody teaches us this stuff. You know, you kind of have to learn a little bit through osmosis and actually putting yourself in environments. Let me ask you this. Have you ever thought about doing a yoga class or doing a sound bowl class where there happens to be more women there than men typically, and just being curious about things like that. Now, I'm just really quickly, I'm from Los Angeles. There's a yoga studio every 15 feet and a sound bowl every 30 feet. So just to give you some context, but going to places where you might just be able to connect with people. And again, from a non-romantic vantage point, just to build some connections.
I've tried, like tried some dance classes, did not necessarily feel like it was for me. And, and
wait, why weren't dance classes for you? You got two left feet?
Well, it just wasn't something I enjoyed doing,
Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
And I've been sort of scouring local events and looking for anything with kind of social potential that I could show up at. But it's just maybe this is more of an isolated area in terms of people that but it's very difficult for me to actually meet someone I'm attracted to, and then when doing these kinds of hobbies, and then who's also available.
Yeah. So what if we turn this script? Okay. What if we turn this script and started to say, it's easy for me to meet people that are aligned with who I am and what I want. It's easy for me to meet people who are aligned to who I am and what I want. It's easy for me to meet people that are aligned to who I am and what I want. Now, let's take out the word attracted. Let's just focus on connecting with somebody that's aligned to who I am or what I want. So if we say it's difficult and we keep saying it's difficult, and we keep saying it's difficult, what's it going to be?
It's going to be difficult.
Yeah. And I'm not diminishing the difficultness. Okay. Okay. This is like doing gymnastics and it's one of the 3.9 on the difficult or the 5, whatever scale, it's on the high on the difficulty scale. I get it, but we don't have to acknowledge that. Okay. We can start shifting it. And even by making a small shift in your consciousness will help build confidence. It's not going to happen overnight. By the way, for the record, my friend, while I've had a number of relationships in my life, I didn't meet the love of my life until I was over 60. So just so you know, you still got plenty of time ahead of you. Okay.
Yeah, I know. My therapist is in kind of a similar situation. But I think that what's different in my situation is that I haven't ever had my romantic value affirmed by anyone.
Okay.
Not even in the short term. So, not having had, my romantic value or my sexuality accepted by someone, it's kind of difficult to be confident in those aspects of myself.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, excuse me, I didn't mean to characterize that way. I totally understand.
Right.
Because again, this is a representative of having some confidence. You haven't had many opportunities in your life, and it's like doing anything. If I handed you a guitar right now and said play, and you've never really played before, you've only done it once or twice, it's going to be kind of challenging. Ultimately, I would say there are things you can do. You can work on your confidence. There are organizations that can help you with that. There's videos you can watch on YouTube even about building confidence, that sort of thing, learning how to approach people, how to communicate, those types of things. There are books, there are organizations you can go to, there's workshops you can go to. I know it's probably a little sparse where you live, but trust me, they do exist. And if this is something you really, really want, you want a life partner, you want something, if you really want something, I suspect if you go deep within yourself, you can find the courage and create the opportunities. And as I said, like you reached out to me, this is one step. And I want you to at least be, kind of be proud of yourself. Doing this right now, just even having this brief conversation with me is one step closer. And you can do this again and again and again. And you can create the building blocks if you so choose. And again, we could focus on how difficult it is. We can certainly hyper focus on the fears that we have, or you can start feeding a different wolf. Now, I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I want you to know you are not alone. There are tens of millions of men just like you right now in the United States feeling exactly the same way. And by the way, there's tens of millions of women who feel exactly the same way. We need to find a way to put you all together in a room. I don't know if there's singles events in your area, if there's speed dating events. Listen, it's easy to sit in our room, watch a little football, watch a little Netflix, that sort of thing. At the same time, believe it or not, just a slight shift in perspective, a slight shift in energy, you might be surprised. And listen, like I said, if any of the women watching this and they're interested in you, we need to put you guys together. But do you think you can make a couple of the changes that I suggested just to see if, and let us know in the next 30 to 60 days to see if anything has popped up?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I can do that.
Okay.
So,
has this conversation been of value to it all?
I think so. And, hopefully it's also been of value to some of the people in the audience who feel maybe isolated and alone in their, uh, if they're in a situation where they're lacking romantic experiences, then, because it is just one of the most alienating things that you can go through when when everywhere you look, there's, happy couples on TV and ads and movies and walking down the street and just, uh, and you wonder like, what's so different about me? Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Why, and by the way, thank you again for that honesty. Part of the reason why I wanted to have you on was to show, look, to the ladies watching, there's good, sincere men out there that have hearts and really are struggling, no different than anyone else out there. To the guys that are watching this, look, you're not alone. This isn't easy. This isn't easy. Human pair bonding, from a physical mating perspective, when we just all lived like cave people, it was a whole different environment. But then again, you only had 20 or 30 people in your tribe. With 330 million people in the United States living oftentimes isolated lives, this isn't easy. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. And yes, I recognize watching happy couples can seem a little demoralizing. But I want you to know this: focus on the happy ones. Say to yourself, I'm going to have what they have. Put yourself in environments to grow emotionally for yourself. Put yourself in environments. And I know this sounds like rhetoric, but I'm going to tell you something. Love is a risk, but it's still the best game in town. And it's worth putting yourself in uncomfortable situations because, believe it or not, I think that's what you're being called to do.
thank you.
All right. Hey, Jay, can I reach into the camera and give you a big hug of appreciation?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, I'm going to end the recording. You stay on for a second, okay? To everyone
Okay.
watching, thanks so much for watching. If you have any thoughts or anything to share or want to connect with Jay, just let me know. Post a comment below. And if we can help you in any way, certainly if you have anything to share with Jay, we really appreciate that as well. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We appreciate you.